Looks like we got some people on here. Welcome. I'm new to all this, guys, so I don't even know who's on here yet. I just see a couple of. Ah, I'm awesome. Native of the South. Forgive me, guys, because I was at work. Actually, that's the reason why I travel. By the way, so you'll see me doing broadcasts. You'll see me doing broadcasts from different states. So I'm a national brand ambassador for a company, and so I'm in different states about every 10 or so days. I go to Atlanta, and then I go to a different state. So I go to Atlanta, a different state. But anyway, tonight, since I happen to be on Eastern Standard Time, I said I wanted to try this live thing again and see if I can get a little bit better. And in my rush to do so, I left my glasses. I don't need glasses for everything, but I need it for reading. So if you see me staring at the screen really close, that's the reason why. Is because I only need it when I'm reading. So I appreciate that, Native of the South. I'm doing awesome. Thank you. Thank you for being on the call. I think there's somebody else on there. You guys, you'll have to chat on the screen until I learn until I learn how to figure out who else is on here. Let me see, is there a way for me to figure out? No, I don't know how to do that. I was just tinkering with something. Uh, where you from, Nate? It says Nate of the South, and I hope I'm reading that right. It says Nate. Used to be from New Mexico. Okay. You say used to be. So where you from now? I show my print shirt here. We only got a handful of people on. I'm only expecting in the very beginning, the early stages of doing this. There'll probably only be a handful of people on here. What I want to start doing is start getting in a habit of doing lives, maybe on Friday night at 9. I'll probably start trying to do that. The only glitch in all of that is, like I said, from time to time, I'm in different states where the time zone is totally different, and so depending upon the time zone, I probably won't be able to do it at 9, especially like when I'm on the West Coast. 9 o'clock for me, you all would be in bed if you're on Eastern Standard Time, but it all depends on where you're from. You said Jeff. So Prince was blind too. I did see him wearing glasses. You make a point. I have seen him wearing glasses. Okay. Well, I don't know how many of you got a chance to see. I don't know how many of you got a chance to see the very first live that we did. But if you got a chance to see the very first live we did, if you haven't, go back and get a chance to watch that. I won't be on them long until I kind of get, like I said, get in the habit. Hillsboro these days. Okay. Um, that's Carolina, right? I think that's Carolina, unless I got that wrong. One of the Carolinas. Um, but anyway, if you hadn't watched the last live, go back and watch that last live. So all I did on the very first live is I went through the process of just explaining a little bit about how the show came about, and I think I explained a little bit about one of the things I really want to ultimately do as the group. I mean, this is years down the road, but it's just something that's always been on my mind in terms of what needs to happen with us, not just our country, but really the world at large. Not to say that I can do all that on my own, but just thinking out loud. One of the things that I'm just noticing is that there seems to be a disconnect with there seems to be a disconnect with, I guess everyone does it, depending upon what country you're in. Everyone is focused on what's happening in their country, and we don't realize that we're all fighting the same thing, which is socialism. So here in the United States, of course, we call them Democrats, but then over in Britain, they'll call them, I think, the Labor Party, and then over in Haiti, they'll call them something else, and then in another country, they'll call them something else. But no matter what it is, when you really break down their politics, you realize we're fighting all the same thing. In China, they're fighting something, they're named something else. I think I mentioned in one of the emails that I sent out to you guys that, for instance, here in the United States, there's there's Antifa, so-called Antifa. I call them so-called Antifa because they're not anti-fascist; they're actually fascist. But here in the United States, there's this group of people all dressed in black who comes out and beat you up or threaten to beat you up if you start talking about freedom, etc., because you're not supporting the Democrat Party. Well, guess what? In China, there was something called the extradition law in Hong Kong. And it was a huge, huge protest out in Hong Kong. I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of people were in that march. But if you'll look that up, there were some people who came out in all white from communist China, I suppose, with some sticks. And they were beating those people in the streets who were out there protesting the extradition law. Well, really, it's the same concept. Those are the people that were dressed in all white, they were supporting big government. And it's just the same thing throughout history. When you look at the brown shirts for Hitler, or if you look at the black shirts for Mussolini, there was always some group that was representing big government. And I think the faster we can realize that we're not alone in this, it's not just a Democrat thing in the United States. It's not just a Labor Party thing in Britain. It's a global thing. That's why all of these people are running from different countries to get here. They're running from socialism. And the sooner we figure that out, I think the sooner we can curtail this. Otherwise, it's just going to happen in cycles. It's going to happen over and over again where countries have to hit rock bottom before they finally realize, they kick the despots out, kick the tyrants out, and then they start injecting capitalism all over again. So we always have to keep going through these cycles over and over again. And maybe there's nothing I can do. Maybe there's nothing we can do. And that's just the way life is, that things happen in cycles. But gosh, it seems to me like we all don't really talk to each other and recognize what the real problem is. So you get people running from country to country in search of, they don't know what it is. They just know that it's better in certain places than it is in the place that they were in. Like even now in California, I see so many people leaving California, but nobody is asking, well, where do these people go? I tell you where they go. A lot of them go to red states. The people leave California because they've made it so awful there with the problem of homelessness, with the problem of the high prices of real estate, with the high taxes, with all sorts of things going on there in California, and everybody wanting to get out. And then they run to Texas, and then they run to Georgia, and then they run to all these other places where it's a lot better. And then the problem is they start infecting those states. I hate to use the word infecting, but that's what it feels like, because all of a sudden you get states like Georgia, which was very red, and now they're starting to say Georgia's in play to be purple or Democrat. That just drives me crazy. Collectivism versus individualism. Exactly. That's really all it is. Nationwide is you get. It was really a fight of collectivism versus individualism. You're absolutely right. And it's so interesting. It's so interesting to watch, because one of the things that I'm noticing, and I'm not going to spend a long time. Trust me, I'm not going to spend a long time talking about TI. But just to give you an idea, someone invited me to be on some kind of podcast of theirs. It's just audio, but I think it'll be good to do a collaboration with them. So as soon as we do the show, I'll let you know, and I'll upload it to my channel. But this one guy wanted me to come on his show and maybe talk about things from a Black conservative perspective. And one of the things that I saw recently, because I'm on YouTube all the time, just like television, but one of the things that I saw recently is that TI is starting to step into comedy. And let me tell you what the controversy is now. So TI has stepped on the comedy stage, and what the issue is, there's this comedian out there named Godfrey, and Godfrey was a headliner at this comedy show. And someone must have dared him in Ti's camp to get on stage and do a comedy bit. Ti got up there, and I guess he must have liked the feeling of being in front of the audience. And so he'd been practicing doing that for like 2 or 3 weeks, I think 3 weeks or something. And so Godfrey was the headliner. He shows up to one of Godfrey's shows and he says, "Hey man, can I go up there?" And so Godfrey gets on this show later, and this comedy show, and he's telling these other comedians, "Man, Ti came to my show, and he asked, can he get on stage?" But he said it's kind of weird because he says maybe people haven't explained to him how it works in this business, but nobody's supposed to go on after the headliner. I know he's a superstar and all that kind of stuff, but that's not really the way it's supposed to work. After the headliner is done, it's done. To cut to the chase, what's happening now is some of the comedians are sore because they're like, how is it that they can invest so much time perfecting their craft, and all of a sudden here's this person who's not even a comedian can jump on there and get top billing, go on with the headliners or just fly into shows and all this kind of stuff. And then Ti made a response back to it, and the gist of the matter is Ti sounded more conservative. It was really interesting because if you ever seen that panel with Ti and Candace Owens, and they had all these other people on there, and I think Killer Mike is there. Ti and Candace Owens bump heads, but I found it so interesting that when Ti was being criticized for just popping in and not waiting his turn per se, his response about why he felt he didn't have to wait his turn sounded very, very conservative. And so what he was really saying is all of these other comedians was like, "Hey man, you should have to go through all of the stuff that we went through." And Ti was like, "I'm sorry. I am who I am. I can't help the fact that I'm a superstar. I can't help the fact that people want to pay to see me speak or whatever it is. I'm the exception to the rule because that's what the market wants." So I'm like, here's a leftist talking about capitalism and talking about the free market, and he's talking about, listen, the people tell me who they want to see. You don't tell me what process I have to go through. If people want to see me, then people want to see me. Now, I haven't seen him do his comedy bit, so I can't say how funny he is or unfunny he is. It sounds like he's just at the stage of just telling stories. But I wasn't going to play video because, as you know, Ti will get into some profanity-laced thing. But I'm just telling you, at the end of the day, basically what he's saying is he sounds pretty much like a capitalist. But it's really interesting just to watch, because that's one of my very first videos that I talked about. I did a video on what is conservatism. And that's one of the things that I said is that a lot of Blacks wrestle with this because they've been taught that being a conservative and being Black, you're a sellout. But a lot of Blacks don't realize that we already have conservative principles. We've already been raised as conservative. We just don't realize it. I gave some examples in the very first video, but when I grew up in my neighborhood, I don't ever remember my dad expecting me to ask for a handout for anything. One of my first businesses that I had was a lawn business where I just got one of those composition notebooks, and hell, I wasn't waiting to get a job. I got that composition notebook and I knocked on doors, and I went from door to door to door asking people who wanted their grass cut. And that business grew so big to the point that I had so many appointments, I had to take on a partner. And then it started just in the neighborhood. And before I know it, some of those neighbors told some people who live outside the neighborhood. And then, I barely have my own driving permit. And now I got to put the lawnmower in the car or something so I can get to some of the customers. So, there's a lot of different examples of things that I grew up with, like that. Hi, Tanya. How you doing, Tanya? Yep. But yeah, it's just really interesting. I said the same thing about in that very first video. I said the same thing also about when, especially if you grew up the traditional way. If a person got a girl pregnant back then, the joke was, if you got a girl pregnant back then, it's like, when are you getting married, right? Because those are conservative principles, dude. You're going to have a family unit. You're not running around just having babies all over the place and not taking care of those. And we didn't consider that conservative. That's just considered having morals, right? So I don't know where all these people get this idea that somehow being conservative is a sellout. When did working hard, when did taking care of your children become being a sellout? I don't understand any of that stuff at all. I just don't. So anyway, I'm probably gonna do a collaboration with someone that does a podcast, and it'll be interesting. I've never done that before. I think they just do all audio now, but I think he's thinking about doing some kind of video. So give me an idea. I mean, you guys can type. I don't know how long it will take you guys to type this stuff, but I'll tell you a little bit about. One of the things I was gonna ask you guys is how did what was your everyone knows about this red pill moment, right? Interesting thing. I don't know how many of you know it. I guess if you're on YouTube a lot, then you already know this story. But Candace Owens has really blown up. But if you guys didn't know, Candace Owens got her start right here on YouTube. So don't underestimate the power of YouTube. Candace Owens got her start on YouTube. I remember when she was just starting, and her screen name was Red Pill Black. That was a screen name. It didn't even have her real name on it. It was just Red Pill Black, and she did these little skits. That just kind of shows you her beginnings. She was doing skits where it was one skit where, and I think she probably still has it on her channel. It was kind of funny, but she was doing this skit where I guess she was supposed to be coming out to her parents and saying she was a lesbian. And so her joke was that they were more willing to accept the fact that she was a lesbian than for her to say she's a conservative. They almost fainted when she was a conservative. But she's playing all of the roles. She's playing the mom and the dad and all this kind of stuff. But my point of the matter is that, man, don't underestimate the power of YouTube here for people getting that red pill experience. I wanted to find out from you guys, what was or do you even remember what your red pill moment was? I'll tell you something that I thought about. For me, I don't know if I'd call it a red pill moment or not. I guess I can't call that a red pill moment because I didn't know that I was a conservative. But way back in high school, I remember when I graduated from high school, I had this moment. I'm an only child, so you spend a lot of time kind of talking in your own head, like having conversations with yourself. But I remember having this moment when I graduated from high school where I was like, "Wow, this is it. I'm graduating high school, so like I'm going to be living on my own. All of these decisions are going to be mine." And I distinctly remember having this conversation in my mind when I said, what do I believe politically? And I don't know why I went there, but my mind thought of Democrats, Republicans. I didn't even really know what that meant. Only thing I knew was that the narrative back then was that somehow Republicans were supposed to be for the rich, and I guess Democrats are supposed to be for the poor or whatever it is, right? And all I knew is I wanted to be successful. And I thought through. I remember having this conversation in my mind distinctly. I said, "Look," I said, "don't be a fool, Rob. You know that those politicians who claim that they're for the little guy, all of those doggone politicians are millionaires. So something's happening behind the scenes. Those guys who claim to be for the little guy, behind the scenes, they adjust those laws so that it works out for millionaires because they are millionaires. So at the end of the day, whose side do you want to be on? Do you want to be on the side of the people who keep getting shafted, or do you want to be on the side of winners?" And I made my mind up back when I was in high school that I wanted to be on the side of the winners. Now, I didn't really understand what Republican principles or any of that stuff. I didn't understand what conservative meant. All I knew was I didn't want to be sitting back somehow on the losing side of all this stuff. That's all I knew. And as I got a little older, my red pill moment actually came when I got into real estate. I was a real estate investor. I still am. I just don't buy as frequently as I used to. But my red pill moment came as when I started buying a lot of rental properties. I got a couple of friends of mine that I grew up with in New York. And when you have rental properties, sooner or later, you got an eviction. That's just the way the rental properties work. But I remember I was having a conversation with one of my friends about the fact that I had to do an eviction. And one of them was giving me this story about, oh, that's crazy. You got to do an eviction. You should let them stay there and all this sort of thing. And I remember listening to him and I was like, and do what? Let them stay there and do what? Like, who's going to pay my mortgage then? And so I remember kind of being sarcastic with him. He's a childhood friend of mine. But I remember being sarcastic with him, and I said, I tell you what, since you feel so strongly about it, why don't you do this? You write me a check for my mortgage. I'll let the tenant stay there and we can save the world together. And I was being sarcastic, of course. And just like a leftist, he wasn't writing no check. He just wanted to, what they call virtue signal. He just wanted to show that somehow he was better because he cared, right? But it meant nothing because he wasn't really willing to write a check. But that was the first little inkling that I might be a little bit different, because I noticed that I bumped heads with a couple of my friends But I still didn't put my finger on the fact that it had to do anything with conservatism. I just thought it had to do with the fact that I was business savvy and a lot of my friends were in the employee space. So we didn't really talk about the same, we didn't have the same interests. We didn't run in the same circles. So I thought it all had to do with business. And somewhere along the line, I started hearing some conservatives speak. And when I heard conservatives speak, they sounded like me. And I was like, isn't this odd? And so I decided I need to do some research on this conservatism stuff. And the more I started, I think the very first video that I watched was of this man who's passed away now, an economist, Milton Friedman. And boy, it was like the floodgates open because I was addicted to watching Milton Friedman. I've seen just about every video on YouTube of Milton Friedman. And then from stumbling into Milton Friedman, I found Dr. Thomas Sowell, and the rest is history. I was just like, I don't know how the heck I was ever a Democrat. I don't know. I don't know what I was going through. I attribute that to when I was young and didn't know anything. All right, let me see. All right, so Nate says, I started liberal. Forgive me, guys. Well, I don't have my glasses on. He said, I started liberal, then became a conservative, 9/11, 01. Now I'm more libertarian than anything else. Why if that matters? No, it doesn't matter, man. That matters to leftists. Everyone is your brother until the rent is due. Amen to that. Amen to that. No, man, that color thing doesn't matter to me. It really doesn't. And even just so all of you know who watch my channel, even the times when I touch on some stuff that has to do with race, I'm not doing that because it's important to me. I'm doing that because sometimes, and you can tell, sometimes when I'm talking to, I consider conservatives my family. So sometimes I'm preaching to the choir, and then other times I'm talking really to leftists who may stumble upon my channel to get them to think a little bit differently. So when I bring up topics that have to do something with race, it's not because I have any interest in that. I'm just trying to get people to think a little bit differently. For instance, with the Civil War, right? One of the things that a lot of black leftists are so entrenched with is they're always like, oh, slavery and white supremacy and blah, blah, blah. And then when I'm talking to Democrats in the middle of my episode, I try to get them to remember, listen, you can't keep harping on white people in slavery and then neglect to remember that the Civil War, in order to have a war, you had to have two sides, right? So if there was somebody with slaves, then who was in opposition to that? Did you forget that they were white people too? I mean, I don't understand how you can live in this bubble where you just think it was just Democrats with a whole bunch of slaves, and then they went to war with who? They went to war with other white people. So it's at the end of the day, I try to get people to understand it's not about the color. Quit letting Democrats divide people by using that kind of logic. It's not about the color whatsoever. I had this conversation and I mentioned it in one of my videos. I can't remember which video, but I had a conversation with my Lyft driver. I don't know how he got on that subject, but it started off, he picked me up in a Tesla and I was asking him about the Tesla. And somewhere along the line, I think he was asking me about me traveling so much. I think that's what it was. He was asking me about me traveling so much and why I travel so much. And then the more he spoke to me, he was like, wow, he says, you definitely have a different mindset. And he says, he brought up the subject. He was like, so he says, how do your colleagues or how do people relate to you? What kind of vibes do you usually have when you're talking with other people? And I was like, I kind of stand out a little bit because my views were a little different, and that opened up the floodgates for this political type talk. But the point is, he a black driver, and he started getting on this thing too about there's just something about white people or whatever. And I said, listen, man, I said, let me give you an example of something. I said, if you'll just put down a color thing for a second. And I used the example of Hong Kong that I just finished telling you guys about. Oh, sorry. I'm in a hotel here in Ohio. Somebody's got a dog and just started barking. You hear that? Okay. But I was telling them, I was like, listen, if you can put your color aside for a minute and just think, I said, do you think that the white man is the problem in communist China? No, it's not a white man in sight. It's autonomous Hong Kong that's trying to avoid communist mainland China, and it's not a white man in sight. So quit saying something with the white man. Do you think the white man is the problem in Venezuela? Do you think the white man is the problem in Haiti? No, but I can tell you what the problem is all across the board. It's this mindset that you can get something for nothing. It's this mindset that there's no such thing as an individual. We're all the same, collectivism. It's this mindset that bigger government is the solution to everything. And then government ends up eating everybody. That's what the problem is. And if you can't see that, people are going to be losing the battle every time. And so I was trying to get him to see that, but obviously it's a lift drive, right? So once he dropped me off, I was like, okay, good conversation, bro. And that's the end of that. Let me see what you guys are saying here. My red pill moment happened gradually by listening to conservative talk radio. Yep, I somewhere along the line. Good point, Tanya. Somewhere along the line, I think I used to work in a bookstore, and I don't. That was a long time ago. I used to live in Birmingham, Alabama, for a little period of time, but I remember this lady coming in, and she had. I'm trying to remember that was I listening to Rush Limbaugh before then? I don't think I was. But anyway, I worked at this bookstore at the cash register, and this lady brought this book in, and I think it was his book called The Way Things Ought to Be. I think that's what it was called, The Way Things Ought to Be. And she bought the book, and she said, and I said something like, wow, that's a really popular book. I said, I've seen a lot of people coming in and buying. And she said, do you know who he is? And I was like, no, I don't know who he is. And she was like, well, he's going to be on Phil Donahue, I think it was back then. Show you how long ago that was. He's going to be on the Phil Donahue show today, or he already was on the Phil Donahue show. And so I bought this book. And so I saw so many people buying it and talking about it that on the breaks, I would take it to the back and read the book. And I was like, And then I happened to watch the Phil Donahue show, and I just started listening to the radio. And like I said, that's probably when I was talking about, I said that I started listening to conservatives, and the more I listened to conservatives, the more I was like, I agree with these guys, but all these people over here expected just to get something for nothing and raise taxes on everybody, and all of these things that I just disagree with. I didn't know where they got that from. I didn't understand where they got that mindset from at all. That's not what it's about. It's about values and character. Exactly. The bigger the government, the smaller the individual. Yep, absolutely. That's why I don't get it. I'm working right now. I'm actually just about done with it. I saw that PragerU put out a video. I don't know if you guys have been noticing what's happening with Bill Maher, but Bill Maher was so far. I shouldn't say was. He still is. I was going to say, but he was so far to the left that I was like, dude, I don't even know how this dude still manages to stay on television. But the past few times that I've seen Bill Maher, he's been coming back towards the right, at least center, or he's not as far left. I don't know how he even gets applause on the show now. But anyway, the last thing that I saw is PragerU even used a clip from him talking about the fact is college scam. And so that's what my next show is about, by the way. So I'm just letting you know that's what I'm working on now. So I know if you're on here, you're probably thinking college has already been a scam. But I have a little bit of a different take on that. Yeah, if someone wants to say college has always been a scam or it's been a scam for a long time, I totally agree with that. So I wouldn't get into a debate with you. But I always look at it as, I guess, because I've done real estate seminars for so long, and when you do seminars, you always see somebody complaining. Somebody pays for a seminar, and then they're not rich by next Friday. And before you know it, they're saying, it's a scam, or they're running to the attorney general or something like that. And really, it's just them being lazy. They just didn't take the education and turn it into something. So I'm really, really hesitant to call things a scam unless really someone's defrauding something. And so, but anyway, just a little heads up. By the time I get to the end of the video, I'm saying the title of it is College Becoming a Scam. And so my opinion definitely is it is becoming a scam. And I won't tell you all the reasons, so you can actually watch it when it rolls out. So it'll be out in the next day or two. I just finished it up today. But to see Bill Maher making comments about that, and I've seen him talking about quite a few things where he's really been beaten up on the left. I think he's been beaten up on the left too about transgenderism, right? Having all these men that are competing in women's sports. But I'm really excited to see that he's waking up. So it lets me know there is a brain working in there somewhere, because some stuff to me is just common sense. And I don't understand how people just swallow some of this stuff. But anyway, Let me see what you guys type in here. You saw that one from PragerU. Yeah. So I posted a little bit on the wall, but then I thought about it. I said, you know what? I need to mention something about this because I kind of felt, I don't know if I'd go as far as saying scam, but I kind of felt that college was unnecessary a long time ago. I only went to college. I got 2 degrees too. I got a bachelor's in associates. Excuse me. I have an associate's in industrial electronics, and I got a bachelor's in computer information systems. But honestly, I only did that because I really wanted to be a real estate investor. My parents, as parents always do, they say you still ought to go to college so you have something to. Everyone knows the answer to that, right? Something to fall back on, right? So that's really the only reason I went to college, just so I could have this something to fall back on. I still ended up being a real estate investor. And it's so funny, most of the money that I've made more money than all of my friends that I've gone to high school with or grew up with, etc. And the funny thing is, almost none of it came from my 2 degrees. I never really worked in electronics. I did work in computer information systems for about maybe about 5 years. I moved here in '95, and then I quit my job in July of 2000. But the bulk of my money came from the fact that I went to this one little real estate seminar, and at one real estate seminar, I ended up buying houses and doing all sorts of stuff. And from houses, I became a national speaker and all this kind of stuff. But all of that money came from a class that I took in like a week. So it's so crazy. So anyway, I told my mom way back when I was going to college, after I graduated from college, excuse me. My mom was trying to talk me into going back and getting my master's back then. And I remember telling my mom, I was like, nah, I'm not really interested in that. My mom was really big on titles. You can have your master's or your doctorate. And I was like, listen, I'm telling you out here from what I was seeing, especially back then, I was like, what was big at that time when I graduated from college was Novell networks. So it was like networking, hooking up all the computers so they can talk to each other, et cetera. And I told my mom, I said, listen, from what I'm seeing right now, you can take a Novell certification for like a week. And as long as you got the certification, the companies will pay you. So I said, what does that tell you? What that tells you is all companies are really interested in are results. They don't give a damn about that sheet of paper. So I don't understand why employers were requiring degrees, because at the end of the day, they were going to retrain you anyway, especially when it comes to fields like IT, technology, something that moves so quickly. You go to a 4-year college, by the time you get out of 4-year college, none of that stuff that you learn is even relevant anymore. It's just not. It's just 4 years later, and you talking about C++ or whatever it is. Nobody's doing that stuff anymore. They're going to retrain you anyway. And so it's refreshing to see companies like Amazon and Tesla and all of these companies that say we don't even require degrees anymore. So that's kind of where I'm going with that. The video, the show that I'm uploading, is that I'm talking about the changes that we're starting to see. And the real reason, and I won't give this part away, but at the end, I give the real reason why Democrats are trying to push for free college. So you'll find that part interesting. Let me see what you guys typing down here. Or when they require a degree, but it can be in anything. Yeah, I've never understood what the liberal arts thing is for, but anyway. But I won't hold you guys. Like I said, all I'm trying to do is just kind of get some more consistency. Oh, since I got you guys on here, one of the things I want to do is a couple things. One, I think we're at like 745 subscribers or something like that now. So the way it works on YouTube is you have to have 1,000 subscribers, and you have to have, I think it's 4,000 watch hours, okay, before you're monetized. So just so you know, my goal is obviously to get monetized, because I do travel. I mean, I have a job just like everyone else. So I travel, I got day job and all that kind of stuff. That's the reason why I don't crank out videos as often, is because I got life in between that, right? And so just to get caught up to speed here on how this job worked, I had to study a whole bunch of stuff about their product, etc. But my ultimate goal is I want to be able to do the YouTube thing full time. I want to be able to get a chance to travel and find out some things. So some of the things you hear on the news, I like to be able to go to some of those locations personally and be able to report on what's really going on there. But in order to get to that level, I got to have something that actually pays the bill beside the day job, right? And so I'm just saying the minimum requirement is 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours. I don't know the details of how the watch hours work, but the part about the subscribers is pretty easy to figure out because you can just see on the screen how many subscribers we have. So for those of you who know people who are like-minded, they can be conservative or they can be people who are open-minded, but they're Democrats, because there still are some Democrats that are like, they're just kind of Democrats by default. It's not they're really passionate about being a Democrat. They don't know the difference between them, or their independence. But as many people as you can drive towards the channel for us to reach that thousand mark, I greatly appreciate that. I'll figure out some sort of contest or something like that. Maybe we can get people engaged, but that's the first benchmark, is 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours. Part of the other reason why I want to do these YouTube lives is because the more people we get on here on a weekly basis, or however often we start doing them, I think that increases watch hours because we get more and more people on here. And then after a while, that boosts up the watch hours, and then we can finally get monetized and have those little commercials and stuff. And guys, I'm sure you already know, I'm probably already preaching to the choir, but again, Candace Owens is a perfect example. Brandon Tatum's a perfect example. Anthony Bryan Logan's a perfect example of people who've done this for so long that they really don't have to have another job. They're making a pretty decent living just doing that. And I'm really, really excited to see Black conservatives doing that, because we have, and I don't remember what video is that? Oh, the one, I made a video called the Rise of the Black Conservative. Somebody thought I was trying to pander to Black people because I said in there, I said, I'm excited to see Black people becoming conservative because, and I really stole this line from Damon John, by the way, the owner of FUBU. I saw him doing some kind of interview, and the phrase he used was, he said, listen, whether you agree or not, Black people control the cool. And I laughed and I said, you know what? You can argue all you want to about it, but he's right. Every time you see some phrase that gets catchy in the mainstream media, it came from us some sort of way or fashion. That's not a thing of being pandering. That's not a thing of trying to be a stereotype. It just is. I can't tell you how many times I'm watching the news and I see someone use the phrase bling bling when they're trying to describe jewelry, and I'm like, bling bling came from Lil Wayne. Come on, that started right in the hood. So there's always somebody adopting something. And so by the same tokens, what I'm trying to say is, look how cool conservatism came when all of a sudden people thought Kanye was going to be a conservative, right? Look how cool it become when more people started getting involved, Black people start getting involved. So every once in a while, you'll see me inject something in the middle of one of my videos that's kind of hood-like because I grew up in New York anyway. So I'm not putting on, that is my background regardless. But at any rate, I'm really interested in seeing more of us out there and having different voices, having different media, because that's when we can get to that point where it is not about being a sellout. It is really about, man, you know what? This dude is making some sense, or this woman is making some sense. That's all it really takes, is for somebody to say, yo, so-and-so is dropping some science over here. I don't know that crap you're talking about over there, but so-and-so is really dropping some knowledge. So that's why some of the courses that not courses, I'm so used to teaching. I was going to say some of the episodes that I'm doing, it will borderline look almost like I'm teaching a seminar, because I go through, like this next one when I'm talking about college, towards the very end, I go through some stuff that you would have seen if you've read any of the Rich Dad Poor Dad books. I go through and I use that diagram to show an income statement to prove a point that I'm trying to illustrate. So some of the stuff, my teaching comes out. And if you've watched that one, what was the last one I did? I did one talking about, Biden's inflation problem. I talked about Biden's inflation problem. That's another one. If you haven't watched that one, watch that one. When I said inflation, Biden's problem, something like that. That's another one where I brought out some of my finance background, because I was showing people how much their dollar has gone down in value. And I bring out the math and I say, look, this is not my opinion. Let me give you the mathematics behind it, and why you should be worried. Because you can really, if you've ever heard your parents, when they were a kid, your parents say something like, hey, when I was your age, I used to be able to buy a gallon of gas for $0.25. And you laugh at them, right? But no, they're not kidding. So I go through that whole history of why that was possible. And the part that'll floor you is that you can still buy a gallon of gas for $0.25 today. So if that doesn't make sense to you, watch that video and you'll understand why. But it is 9:40. I don't know how long I'm supposed to talk on these things. I don't know if there's even any rules about that, but I'm just talking because I'm just appreciative of the fact that you guys are on here. So thank you, by the way. Thank you, by the way, from hopping on here. Like I said, the biggest thing that we can do, the biggest thing I can do is keep creating content that's telling the truth and spreading the word and keeping you guys engaged, and trying to dedicate and do that more seriously. The biggest thing you guys can do is just let people know. Say, hey, have you seen this guy's videos? This guy, whatever it is you think. I want to put any words in your mouth, but share the videos, get people to subscribe, and eventually we'll get to the point of being monetized and being able to crank out more videos. Another thing that I want to utilize is there's a community tab that's underneath my channel. When you go on the channel, you'll see that there's a community tab there. It's almost like a billboard where I can post stuff, and I guess all the subscribers see it, but I haven't seen anyone go to it. So I haven't seen anyone like it or type a comment underneath it or whatever it is. You'll see what I'm saying. When you go to the channel, you'll see it says community or something like that. But I'd like to be able to post stuff there, like when we have a live or if there's any update or something coming. I want to be able to do that rather than having an email or text or a post. Because right now I have to post in several places, like just to make sure people are on the live. I have to email people, and I have to post in there's like 3 or 4 different Facebook groups and on my wall. And then it's just a lot of stuff. But I'd like to ideally be able to post in one place and be like, boom, here's the update. Everybody come on, and this is how we can, start really growing. Thanks, Jeff. Good job. I learned from watching you perform live. Thanks. I'll check that out. And the other thing, this has nothing to do with real estate. I'll just tell you the reason why I did it. Some of you know that I used to, I don't know if you knew this, Jeff, but some of you may know that I used to do some international seminars for some of the guys on Shark Tank. So I've got some videos. If you'll notice, this show is the Rob Lett Show, but you'll notice I have another channel that says Rob Lett Vlogs. Those clips, a lot of those came from when I used to do some seminars for some of those guys on Shark Tank. I used to travel so much, just like I'm traveling now, but it was all business and real estate related. And so I ended up, after that project ended, I ended up with all these clips of videos and photos from places. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do with all this stuff. I just got a bunch of video with no context as to why I was there, where I was sometimes. And so I came up with this idea. I said, I'm trying to think ahead. I said, when people get popular, I'll just use a Kim Kardashian just as an example, okay? When people get popular, the more a person gets to know them, the more they want to know more stuff about them. And so I'm trying to forecast when this channel gets to that point. I said, a lot of people just know me for politics, but there's going to be a point where someone's going to be like, wow, Rob's actually cool. He's not stiff shirt. He's got a sense of humor, whatever it is. And so I started taking some of those videos from when I traveled that had nothing to do with politics, and I purposely put them out there because I want people to get another perspective of conservatives, because Democrats have started as things that all conservatives must be millionaires. Otherwise, how can you think like that unless you're a millionaire? Or all conservatives are boring, stuffed shirt people. I'm like, I'm just a dude. I'm just a guy. There's nothing, there's nothing, I don't know, nothing oppressive or anything about me. I'm just attracted to logic. I'm attracted to making sense. All right. That's all it is. So if you hadn't seen Rob Lett Vlogs, go on Rob Lett Vlogs, probably only about 5 or 7 videos or something like that. I think it's 4 or 5 videos up there now. But that's what I'll be doing, is I'll be alternating between some political content and just some personal content that's just travel. All right. So I won't take up any more of you guys' time. It is 9:44 now. Interesting. I like Shark Tank. Yep. So I'll thank you guys for coming out. What's great about this is I don't have to edit these videos. The lives are just as they are. So I'll have this up. If you need to come back and rewatch this, you can. If you want to share this with anyone, you can. So thank you guys for coming out. Like I said, what I'm going to work on doing is I'm going to work on trying to make this a regular thing. So that way, maybe we can get some momentum going. So I'll try to shoot 4 Fridays at 9. The only challenge is going to be when I just happen to be in states where I'm not on the East Coast, because then it'll make it a little challenging as to what time to actually do it. But next Friday, I'll definitely be in Georgia. No, I take that back. Shucks, as soon as I said that, I'm going to be in Colorado. So I'll figure it out. but I'll give you guys a heads up. So I'll still try to make it 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but I'll just adjust. I'll figure out how to do this. All right. But thank you guys for coming out. All right. And I'll roll this new show out tomorrow. It's going to be, I'll probably try to put it out tomorrow at Sunday at the latest. It's going to be on Is College Becoming a Scam? All right. So thank you guys for coming out. Y'all guys have a good night. Talk to you later.